The murder of John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963 has every element of a classic coup d'etat. My mother worked in the Pentagon. She was 5 levels above top security. She had clearance to go into the war room. She was the highest paid woman employee of the Pentagon for 30 years. She worked under the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel. Her job was a manpower analyst. She didn't know everything. Ellsberg was 15 levels above top security. At every level he reached, he realized there was another when he brought them into that. That's classic control. It's the way any cult or secret society operates. You have concentric levels of knowledge and need to know and exclusion and people going up. But she was fairly high up, especially for a woman, and she provided them with figures. These figures were based on actuarial tables and combat death projections she was given by the Joint Chiefs. The purpose was to take a current force level, troops in the military, a future force level they wanted to be at down the pike, and to project in the intervening years how many would die non-combat, how many would retire, how many would re-enlist, how many enlist anew, how many discharge under each category, and therefore how many did you have to draft each year in order to get the troop level you wanted. She projected the annual national draft call figures for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Those were given to selective service and used in state by state and then local board quotas in those years up until the time of the draft lottery. She had to project that figure on the national annual scale right within 100 people either way. 100 people either way when you had calls of up to 50,000 people a year. She had to project that figure that accurately 5 years in advance. My mother sweated the figures that came in each year because they were from 5 years before to figure out if she'd made the right projections. And she was consistently on target. They went off target when they replaced her with computers. She did a good job for them. She was there from 1942 to 1972, 30 years of service for the Joint Chiefs. After she retired in 1975, and after long arguments about the validity of the Vietnam War, and her admission to me finally that it was a genocidal war, that she hated the napalm and the civilian deaths that she had been a part of, I asked her, when did they tell you they would escalate? Because she had to be among the first to know. I give you this story so you no longer have to go in endless debate between John Newman, Peter Dale Scott, and Noam Chomsky about National Security Memoranda 275 or 276, whether Kennedy had any intention to pull out of Vietnam. She told me that in the spring of 1963, she was given figures to begin a troop withdrawal by the end of that year that would end with all U.S. troops out by the end of 1964, from the Joint Chiefs of Staff directly down from the presidency. I said, when did they escalate? She said, late November of '63. I said, the last week. Kennedy's dead on Friday the 22nd. She said, the Monday following the assassination. I said, a few more advisors. She said, I couldn't believe the figures. I took them back to the Joint Chiefs, and I said, these can't be right. The first civilian protest to the war in Vietnam. November 25, 1963, Kennedy just in the grave, probably not even buried yet, sitting in the casket. They told her a war in Vietnam would begin then to last 10 years with 57,000 American dead. Your future doesn't belong to you. It's not planned by you. It's planned at other levels. That day, I talked to people in the Strategic Air Command, the pilots that were in the air the hour of the Kennedy assassination, responsible for the defense of the United States. If there was an attack in the United States, these are the planes that get the encrypted signals to go to failsafe, to carry on nuclear war, to do whatever is necessary for emergency response. Strategic Air Command, in the air, out of Kansas City on an 8-hour shift. They're up 24 hours. Radio chatter that the president has been shot in Dallas. The pilots go where? For their code books. The thing that will tell them whether they're getting a legitimate message and what the message means. The code books are in lockers. 2 of them have to undo the key, open it up. To a plane, they told me. There was not a code book aboard. There's no mafia goon in New Orleans. There's no anti-Castro hothead in Miami. There's no CIA schlepper working for E. Howard Hunt that can touch those damn books. That's 16 hands on and off the plane. That means that if there was a nuclear attack that hour, there would have been no defense. That means the defense of the United States was compromised at the time of the Kennedy assassination. That is Joint Chiefs of Staff. Who developed Strategic Air Command? The Chief of Staff of the Air Force, Curtis LeMay, who later sat watching from the teaching seats. You know, they had an open morgue at Bethesda, and they had teaching bleachers. And Hume said to Paul O'Connor, who was working on Kennedy's head, a young intern, when he saw someone sitting up in the stands with his arms folded, grinning, smoking a cigar, run over and tell that SOB, Humes is the commander in charge, tell that SOB with the cigar to get the hell out of here. O'Connor went halfway and saw who it was and ran back. Did you tell him what I said? He said, Commander Hume, that's General Curtis LeMay. He said, my God, you didn't say anything to him, did you? Shoup was at his physical that day from the Marines, but Maxwell Taylor was in-house. So was the head of the Navy. The entire communication system in the Pentagon, according to my mother and my aunt who worked there, intergovernmental phones, not your regular phone system, the phones from one government agency to another went dead for a period of 2 hours starting 12:30 at the time of the shooting. Okay? It would have been 1:30, I guess, Eastern Standard Time, or whatever the time difference was, but at the time of the shooting, the phones go dead. The government offices can't communicate. Where's the cabinet at this time of crisis? They're flying back from a major meeting in Honolulu about what? The fate of the Vietnam War. They come back with a recommendation for a 10-year war implemented by the Joint Chiefs, worked out there, to a new president who signs it that weekend and puts it into effect. That plane, according to Pierre Salinger in his book, does not have a code book aboard, incommunicado with the cabinet. You see, this is, if you read the book Coup d'etat by Edward Luttwak, who's an advisor to Reagan and no friend of mine, but he knows how it works. And in Handbook, Coup d'etat Handbook, he lays out how you do a coup d'etat. This is how you do it. You strip the security. The 112th Military Intelligence Group in the Dallas area that would have had responsibility for the presidency and backup for Secret Service there at the plaza is ordered off, not needed. Don't send the troops in that day. You pull the security off. You compromise the communications. The black box that links the president to the stacked bombers, what they call a nuclear football, has to be with the president 24 hours a day, disappears in Dallas for a period of nearly 8 hours before it gets... Johnson's already back to the White House before black box control is in his hands. Someone else is in charge of the country.